Hello, everybody. Welcome into SportsDay Insider, presented by the Dallas Morning News. I am Kevin Sherrington, joined by my pals Grant and Calvin Watkins, who's here to talk about the disaster that is the Dallas Cowboys. That's what Big D stands for now, is Big Disaster. Calvin, there's a lot of stuff going on with the team you cover right now. I don't know that there's ever been as much controversy, and the Cowboys are just all about controversy. That's what Jerry wants. He told us that in the Netflix special, right? It's a soap opera, 365 days a year, and he is certainly stirring that pot constantly. Since the last time we talked, the Cowboys traded Micah Parsons to the Green Bay Packers, and there was a lot of things that prompted all of that. First of all, though, I want to ask you just this, Calvin. There's been a lot of speculation that this was an emotional trade, that it was based on Jerry's emotions. Jerry was angry at Micah Parsons and traded him. Do you think there's anything to that?
Yes, I do. I do believe that this was an emotional trade from Jerry. I think he really felt like there was a deal done in place, and we've talked about this. They had a discussion in March at the Star, and then Jerry talked about how he met with Micah several other times after that, Big 12 championship game and so forth, Super Bowl, and he really thought that, hey, he had a deal with Micah. And then many people in the organization also felt the same thing, that they had a verbal agreement. But when Micah said, I got to bring my agent in, David Melagetta, everything went haywire. So I think Jerry just said, you know what, I'm done with y'all, instead of trying to work it out. Because before they traded Micah, the agent reached out to the Cowboys and said, hey, let's try to do a deal. And the Cowboys gave Micah an ultimatum. Either you play under the fifth-year option or we're going to trade you. And Micah said, I want an extension. So they traded him.
So, first of all, doesn't that violate the old axiom, never let your money get mad? I mean, it's surely Jerry understands that better than anybody else. I'm wondering in all of this, that leads to my second question about this. I sense in Jerry here, the older he's gotten, the more obstinate he seems to have gotten, and wanting his way, and maybe not so much he's always wanted his way, obviously, but it seems like he's a little more intractable than he used to be. I guess the second question I want to ask you is, when they made that deal, one of the things they said was that it was unanimous. Everybody thought, yes, this was the thing to do. And this really felt to me like a Donald Trump sitting in there with his cabinet on a table, and they go around the room and everybody tells him how great he is. Is this another example of that? Could all those people really think this was the best thing to do?
I don't think so. But as you said, when the emperor is sitting down and says, what are we going to do here? And we're going to put gold plates up. Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're going to do that. That's what we're going to do. And I think that's the case here. It was surprising when Jerry said it was a unanimous decision in this thing, and that included the head coach, Brian Schottenheimer. Ultimately, you could say, you know what? If we're going to trade Micah Parsons, we're rebuilding, right? Yeah. And Jerry denies that they're rebuilding. But you know what? You got 2 first-round picks in the next 2 years, and Jerry has talked about this team is a lot younger because he says we lost a third of the team last year. We have a fresh coaching staff. We have newer, younger players. So you are rebuilding in essence. I mean, they have a difficult schedule, as we've always talked about. So yes, when the emperor walked in, everyone bowed, and they made the move.
Well, Calvin, there were a couple takeaways just from watching the presser. Was that was certainly the role Steven played up on the table. And listen, we all know how organizations work. You bang your fist, you say whatever you want to say in the room and make your point. But then when you go and you face the public, it was all hands were in agreement on this, that we were in agreement. So I don't, that was the least surprising part for me of watching that press conference. I just feel like what I took away from all this was that there were the ravings of an old man who has delusions after watching his Netflix documentary that he was going to make a great gamble, And to your point, that he was emotional and threw a fit. And I think that's what came across. And there was one other thing that was said in there, and you guys all know this. Jerry basically said that this was, you guys all know Jerry's posturing publicly, but Jerry said, hey, this was all a negotiating tactic. Everything you heard for the last month was just a negotiating tactic. So don't believe anything I say, which I think, again, just speaks to he's got zero credibility with the media or the fans and has for a long time, but there's nothing. So there was nothing from that press conference worth believing is what I took out of that.
Yeah, there was a lot of revisionist history there from Jerry. To me, the bottom line is you don't trade generational talent, right? If you're going to do that, then you're telling your fan base and you're telling people inside the building, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, hockey, it doesn't matter what, hey guys, we're going to reset. You know,
that's the point you made in the presser when you questioned Jerry.
Yeah, this is a reset, and he denied it. He said that's not true. He said we're here to win now. Well, everyone wants to win now. If you get lucky, because he also said if we have a chance to, give up one of those first-round picks to get a premium player this year, we'll do it. Well, he only will do it if they go, you know what, we need a running back. So this is a bad running back, or a great running back on another team, and we need him to get us into the playoffs, then we'll do it, right? Because we're going to make a deep playoff run. Outside of that, they're not giving up any picks. Why would they?
No, not now. Although I will say that I can see this when it all happens and when it comes about, because Jerry talked about how that could become 5 players. Well, and this is the back to the old bad days of Jerry from 1996 until about 2006. When he was trying to be like Jimmy did and make trades and trade down, trade up, do whatever, accumulate more picks because we get more players that way. And it was a disaster, But that 10 years of poor drafting and all the decisions he made trading out of the first round and doing all of that is one of the reasons why they had all those losing seasons before Will McClay came along and was in charge of the draft. So, Calvin, let me ask you this then about, because of something you just wrote for today's Dallas Morning News, which was about Trayvon Diggs and his relationship with Parsons. He was his best friend on the team. He made it sound like it's just his best friend in general. Ask you how many, because this question came up because I kind of wrote one thing and Tim Calishow wrote another. My impression was that he was popular with his teammates, that they liked him. To me, it was like, what was not to like about it? You may not like the podcast, you may not like certain things, but he certainly seemed like a pretty, positive, lighthearted kind of guy. So, but you would know that a lot better than me, having spent so much time in that locker room. So what is your take on the impact on his teammates?
I would say there were guys who liked him. I would say there were some guys that just tolerated him. And then he needed to be more of a leader along the lines of Dak Prescott. There was a reason why they moved Micah's locker from across the locker room to next to Prescott's. They wanted him to say, hey, this is how you lead. Dak is beloved in the locker room. He's beloved in the organization. So, Micah, if we're going to pay you the largest contract for a non-quarterback in the history of the league, we need you to be more of a leader, right? And I think some guys are leaders and some are not, regardless of the money that you give them. Like they wanted Trayvon Diggs to be a leader, and that's not him. Diggs is a quiet guy. He talks soft. He's a nice guy, but he is not say, all right, guys, let's go. That's not him. Mike is like that in a way, but he was I don't think he was this hated figure. Like I think maybe people in the national media are trying to project him out to be. People liked him. I mean, I've talked to quite a few players before the trade and after the trade, and everyone's pretty consistent. They did not want to lose him, right? So you don't want to lose guys you don't like, right? You want them on the field. Now, like Charles Haley, like one of the things we noticed from that documentary or that docuseries, it seems as if Charles Haley was a knucklehead, right? But everybody dealt with him because he's a great player.
Right.
And they dealt with him. Deion Sanders and Detroit did not get along. That's evident, right? That's fact. We've written that 1,000 times. But you won a Super Bowl with the man. right? And then years later, Troy became closer to Dion. So you don't have to be best friends with people not to play with them, right? So I think it's a little bit of both. People tolerated him. He was like, you could say Diggs beloved him. The young pass rushers loved him, but DeMarcus Lawrence did not, sort of, quote unquote, like him. Malik Hooker kind of like, I tolerated him, you know. Malik Hooker criticized him, and Malik Hooker's locker is next to Parsons, right? So in the offseason, Malik says, look, man, you should be doing the podcast, blah, 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 blah. He says it on Twitter. They get into a beef. So the next season, Malik Hooker's locker is on the other side of the room, you know? So if you're boys, you stay close to your boys, right? To your friends, right? They moved them to the other side. And then when you ask Malik about it, Malik says, nah. They want me to close with the DBs. Oh, wait a minute. I thought everyone's supposed to be, you know, we don't position our lockers based on position of, you know. So it's a little bit of everything, but I don't think he was this hated guy like I think maybe someone trying to project it to be.
I think that's a very good breakdown, Calvin. I appreciate you doing that. That was good. All right, so let's get into this opener here. I know we have a short amount of time to talk about it.
Opener in Philly. Fighting Philly.
Yeah, there you go. I can't think of a time when they were more ill-positioned to start a season and against a team this good than right now. I know that Dak Prescott has a good record against the Eagles, especially at home. But this one is not at home, and you're starting on the road. You know, this kind of requires a fast start for the Cowboys. I don't see a fast start coming. I foresee a little bit of what happened Monday night for Bill Belichick when he made his opening bid as a college coach against TCU. The first drive looked great. After that, not so much.
I had fun watching that game. I had fun watching that.
It was kind of fun watching that, wasn't it?
I like train wrecks. I like train wrecks.
Yeah. So anyway, so what is your take on this, Calvin, right now? Are these Cowboys prepared to take on the Philadelphia Eagles Thursday night in Philadelphia?
I think they'll be on the field, no doubt.
They'll be on the field. Well, that's good. They'll show up.
Yeah, contractually, they're obligated to show up in Philadelphia. I think they'll be there. This is a rock'em sock'em game, right? And the Eagles beat them up badly last year. And I think Vic Fangio, who's the defensive coordinator for the Eagles, he is, I believe, 4-1 against Dak Prescott.
I think that's right.
Prescott beat him in his rookie year in 2016. And you know how long ago that was? I wasn't even on the beat in 2016. I was covering basketball back then, another outlet. So I remember I had to ask Todd Archer. I said, hey, do you remember the 2016 game? Because I don't remember it because the Cowboys blew out, I forgot who they played. Chicago. That's what it was, Chicago. And Archer was like, no, I can't remember what happened in that game. But since then, Vic Fangio's defense has dominated the Cowboys. Mike McCarthy couldn't beat him. Jason Garrett couldn't beat him. And now, I don't know if Brian Schottenheimer can beat this guy. So,
well, you know, Vic Fangio famously said he's got the formula for beating the Cowboys, right?
He's got the formula. He's got the big pass rushers up front. He's got some new corners. And obviously, when you have Jalen Hurts and you have those receivers and a good running back, that just complements it. And you got the tush push. So it's going to be it might be a long night in the city of brotherly love.
Yeah, it sounds like
Kevin,
it to me.
Do we have to stop at any point in this time for you to offer your ode to Howie Roseman?
No, we do not. Well, we could though. I mean, who's a better GM in NFL right now than Howie Roseman, Calvin?
God, you love Howie Roseman.
He does a good job at acquiring picks. He knows when to sign his players. I'm not saying everything is perfect because, look, they drafted Jared Goff, right? I'm not Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, right?
Yeah.
But they knew when to pivot from Carson Wentz, which is a good thing. They gambled and signed Saquon Barkley, and it worked out, right? So,
well, they drafted Jalen Hurts when they still had Carson Wentz, right?
Right. Yeah, I think it's second round, something like that. So, yeah.
So
he's taken some gambles, and they have worked out. You know, no doubt about it. So
the thing about him that is so good, and I've said this 1,000 times about Jimmy Johnson, what I loved about Jimmy, that was my epiphany about Jimmy Johnson, was when he started cutting third-round draft picks. It's like, holy smokes, this guy will not sit on a mistake. You know, And
Cowboys
that's
see no
Howie Roseman.
mistakes.
That's what Roseman does. After a while, or they let people go. He's let a lot of good players go, right? And they've gone on and been good other places. But he keeps replacing them with good players. That's the thing about Jerry. If I thought he was really going to do something great here after this trade of Micah Parsons, then maybe. But and I have a lot of faith, as I'm sure you do too, in Will McClay and how he's drafted. But in the last, I don't know, 8 or 9 years, those first round picks in the 20s haven't been so good. He snuck in. Let's see, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head.
Got Tyler Smith.
He got Tyler Smith. That's right. But he also got Tyler Guyton. He also got Taco Charlton, and he also got Mozzie Smith, all in the 20s. And so it's not a great track record. I mean, and look. Let's look at what the Packers are going to do now. Not only did you trade, just like the Mavericks, trading Luka Doncic to the Lakers, one of your chief rivals in the West, they traded him to the Packers, the one team that has been a thorn in the Cowboys' side throughout their history, right? And
not
now
they traded him to a team that's going to be good this year and going to be good next year. And so
if you'd have traded him to the Browns, that would have made. If you traded him to the Browns, would have made all the sense in the world to me. Not that the Browns would. They're already paying Myles Garrett. They're not going to pay another one. But if you trade him out of your conference and trade him to a bad team, if you're going to get potentially 2 top 10 picks in consecutive years, well, then holy cow. Then I would have said, all right. I said, that's okay with me. But not if you're getting 2 picks in the 20s. There's a huge difference.
The one thing you do, well, there's 2 things, Kevin, right now. I mean, we assume that the Cowboys this year aren't going to be a great team. So they'll have 1 pick that will be fairly high and a second pick that will be lower, and they'll have some ability maybe to move some picks around and move up a little bit if they want to grab somebody. But, yeah, I mean, it still all goes back to this. If you were going to trade Micah, the time to trade Micah was before this year's draft, not before the season started. That's when you were going to leverage that into the most picks and perhaps help this team in the most significant way.
Of course, that's before he got mad too, right?
Right.
So Calvin, tell us now who you think is going to be playing here. So you think that Trayvon Diggs may play on Thursday?
Yeah, he said he's got a 75 to 80% chance of playing Thursday, and that's a very surprising because when he got hurt last year, we thought he was not going to come back for maybe until November, right? Tyler Guyton, who we all thought, needed his leg amputated, has a fractured bone in his leg, and he might play in the season opener. Both of those guys were on the injury report, and they were full participants. On the cautious side, I might say we'll see you week 2 against the Giants, right? But it seems as if they might be willing to go week 1. And if that's the case, that's a positive sign for the Cowboys, and it gives them a fighting chance against the Eagles, even though none of us believe that they'll beat the Eagles Thursday night.
All right, on that vein here, so let's give some scores here. What do we think here? I'm going to go first. Okay. I'll say the Cowboys. The Eagles will beat the Cowboys. I'm going to say 35-17. Evan, you go next.
You want me to go next? Let's get the 2 guys with no knowledge out of the way, and then we'll go to Cal.
Speak for yourself, pal.
I'm gonna say that the Cowboys are gonna actually have a stop somewhere along the way, so they'll hold Philadelphia to a field goal somewhere. So it'll be 38-21. No, 38-17. I'm gonna stay with the 17. I'm right with you on this, Kevin.
Okay. All right, Calvin, what do you say?
I got 35-17.
We're all just going to say the same thing. That's good.
I want to say the same thing. Because I think the Cowboys will score 2 touchdowns, and then they got like the best kicker in the league. So he's going to get like a 59-yard field goal or something. And then I don't know if the Cowboys can stop Philly, right? Because one of the things the Cowboys have talked about is they got to get out to a fast start. Schottenheimer's talked about, we got to throw jabs. We got to establish the jab early on. We got to set the tone. So we'll see if they can set the tone in Rocky's house.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing is you've got this whole remade defense now, right? This slap together defensive line, and you've got to go stop one of the best offenses in the league. It just feels like it's going to be a textbook running up and down the field for the Eagles.
Yeah, and we want to get off to a fast start with a quarterback who didn't play a down in the preseason.
Well,
So
he's
that makes
okay.
perfect sense.
I gave you the stats on that. He's okay.
You gave me the stats on that, but I was okay with it as long as they weren't playing the defending world champions. If they start off with Jacksonville, that'd have been fine. But the Eagles in Philly, it feels like a human sacrifice is what it feels like to me. Like this was Roger Goodell putting a sacrifice on the national altar to the god of the NFL. The Dallas Cowboys are the virgin sacrifice. So, yeah, here we go. Off to that. Calvin, thanks for coming on with us, man. You were great as always. I appreciate all your help on all this. We're going to move over now and talk a little bit of college football. Joining us now, my old pal Kirk Bohls. And when I say old, I mean old. He's even older than I am, which is hard to believe. I'm trying to remember, Kirk, in all the years that I've known you, when was the first time that we met? Do you remember? I don't have any clue.
Well, I'm surprised you can remember the weekend, at your age.
That's pretty much.
I bet it was
Pretty
like
much.
a Southwest Conference baseball game or something like that.
Probably was
Maybe an Al
something
Carter.
like that. Because Kirk started covering UT in 1976, which was not coincidentally Darrell Royals' last year as a coach at Texas. He finally said, "That's it. That's enough. I'm not taking it anymore. If I've got to have this little fart following me around and making my life miserable, I'm getting out of this."
That's true. That's true. I remember asking Jones Ramsey, what's the difference with sports writers now and back in the heyday? And he went, "Well, Darrell didn't have to deal with turds like you." Yeah, nothing like being blunt, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
Ran Darrell out of the business.
Yeah, it certainly did. Well, it certainly establishes Kirk as an expert on the subject, and he is that. Many subjects, but especially about Texas. So before we get into the weekend, which we spent in Columbus, Ohio, which was not a great weekend for UT, not a horrible weekend. I disagree with everybody making it out to be a disastrous start for Texas. That was not a disastrous start. It wasn't a good one, but it wasn't disastrous. But did you catch the game?
Start.
Yeah. Well, did you catch that TCU North Carolina game?
I did, as much of it as I could stomach. I mean, that was a shell of a football team, North Carolina. And who had to enjoy that was one Mac Brown. Is like,
oh, I said the same thing to my wife. We were watching. I said, "Don't you know Mac Brown is loving this?"
He had.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I mean, did you see they had balloons at the press conference for Belichick? In the post game, you got balloons everywhere. It's like, where's the cake? Come on. This is a bunch of 12-year-olds.
Those 48 points he gave up were the most in his career. He has never given up 48 points in a game.
Not bad for the 33rd NFL franchise, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was a lesson learned there. Maybe I wonder has anybody seen Jordan Hudson? Is she still around? Has she left the campus there at Chapel Hill?
She was in a box last night wearing a Super Bowl ring, and that was a thing on Twitter. So yeah, it's all good. But if you guys are done strolling down memory lane, Kevin, where you're like, I mean, Netflix is going to do an 8-part documentary series on you, another octogenarian. And if we're done talking about Bill Belichick, can we get to something else overhyped in the Texas Longhorns?
Wow. Why are you so crabby?
I'm trying to get this thing back on the rails.
First of all, I need to introduce my old pal, okay? I think our readers, our listeners deserve that. And it was the last thing that happened was that disaster last night. So now we'll get to the one from Saturday.
Quick hint. Everybody in the state who's anybody knows Kirk Bohls. You, I'm not so sure about.
Well, that's what everybody says, but what the heck? Yeah, well, that's right. Dave Wilson called him the legendary Texas reporter Kirk Bohls, so that's why I call him LTRK now.
Stop it!
All right, so Kirk, what was the score you predicted for that Texas Ohio State game?
think it was like 24-21, the home team, which
You had
didn't.
Ohio State.
No, I had Texas, the home team that I cover here. I had Texas beating them by a field goal. I
No,
was
I,
stunned they could look that bad on offense. Just stunned. I
they
mean,
they they were terrible. Now I will say this: they were, before we go to Arch Manning and how he played in his debut. I thought the defense was terrific,
it was.
and in a weird way, if I'm only going to have one of the two things really play well, I want the defense to play well. I want
Yeah.
to know that your defense is solid and that they're going to keep you in games, right? Doesn't it? Because that was always the problem with all the Big 12 teams. Was that, yeah, they can all play offense, but nobody can stop anybody, and then they get into the postseason and they get whipped. So it seems to me like that's the number one thing you want to be in the SEC is have a good defense, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, and in the trenches, both lines of scrimmage, and they did a good job, holding their own at the line of scrimmage defensively. But in fairness, Ohio State didn't try a whole lot. I mean, what Julian Saban threw 20 passes, so I
Yeah.
think that was part of the reason they didn't have a takeaway or a sack because they didn't put Julian Saban in harm's way very much. So, but obviously Sark needed the defense to score if they were going to make a game of it. But
Yeah, that would have been good. Yeah, Sonny
yeah,
Dice got 2 scores from his defense
yes,
last
he
night.
did.
That's what Sark needed.
Yeah,
So your takeaway then on the first game with Arch Manning, or Arch Manning's performance in his first game as let me say as the starting quarterback.
I would say embarrassing comes to mind. He was a flop. There's no denying it. I mean, yeah, I think we were the problem to a certain degree, guys, because we built him up into being Peyton Manning, this soon in his career, and he just wasn't ready for that. And he kind of acted like he wasn't going to be the nervous type at all. But, Kevin, when you and I are sitting there and see that first pass, he's got a wide open, DeAndre Moore, and he bounces it not even near his feet. It wasn't even that close to him. I think a lot of people went, well, maybe he's not quite ready for this. And so I think those are the two takeaways, that he was rattled, he was nervous, uh, he was very off target. And then Matt Patricia and the defense, just killed it because, they disguised their coverages, dropped in zone coverage a lot. And he didn't have a lot of open receivers. And when he did, he didn't hit them. So it was a terrible performance, I think, by any standard.
I think the thing that surprised me the most, Kirk, was just what you said. He was just so nervous. I just wouldn't have thought he'd have been so rattled. But it seemed like he threw fastballs the entire night. There wasn't
Right.
he never threw a changeup. It's like, you know, I can think of several instances where, one where Ryan Wingo is what they get a first down at the 3. He got at least the first down. He's running wide open right in front of him, just right in front of him. Just toss it out there to him, and he throws a bullet that Wingo has to reach out, and it's out in front of his knee, and he can only get one hand on it. And that's always been the thought about a quarterback. If they're wild and high, then they're overhyped. Well, he was everything: high, low,
Yeah,
around, behind. He threw probably 5 good passes the whole day, and
probably.
so
Look, I
I
don't care
wonder.
what your lineage is, right? I don't care, what you come from and how hyped you are. You do go on the road to face the defending national champions, right? In a sold out arena with, you're getting the Wright Thompson essay treatment on the pregame show.
Right.
I don't know that Sark and guys, I was watching at home, but I wasn't like charting plays. I don't know that Sark helped him out a lot by trying to run any early, and so I think a lot got pushed on him, and I would call it a disappointing first start from where I was, and it was, I was cracking wise at home, but I don't know if I'd go to embarrassing yet. I just feel like in retrospect, some of this is to be expected the first time a quarterback goes out, and nobody goes out in that environment and has to play like that kind of caliber of opponent for their real first, what amounts to their real first start.
Right. No, that's a good point, Evan. And when I say embarrassing, I think more embarrassing to Arch because he had such high expectation. But you're right. I mean, who could have lived up to that hype? And Kevin, to your point, he did. He had one speed on his balls. He was rifling in those balls, and this guy is the anti Quinn Ewers from every standpoint. I mean, Quinn Ewers started 36 games, and was 27-9, and he played like 19 top 25 teams. This is his first on the road, and Quinn had nothing if not touch. He had the best touch of maybe any Longhorn quarterback I've ever seen. He couldn't hit the deep ball to save his life. He couldn't scramble to save his life. And Arch has wheels. And Sark even admitted he wished he would run him more that first half, kind of, maybe get a little bit of contact and get some of the nerves out. But that one to Ryan Wingo, when they had that 3rd and 3, I think it was at the 9, he may score on that, Kevin. You're not sitting to each other, and he just drills it. And I don't think Ryan Wingo expected it to come in at that speed. So, and the other thing, guys, is that expectations are so high. You had the hype train for Arch, and then you add in the fact they're preseason number 1 for the first time ever, and they have red zone problems. They've had red zone problems as long as Sark has been here. They now, because they were 0-2, they ranked dead last in the FBS. They're tied for 124th. And but if he scores on that quarterback sneak, okay, now maybe we have a tie game and it goes to overtime and everything looks a little bit different. But when we talk,
absolutely, for all that's why it's not a disaster to me.
Right.
Losing by 1 touchdown to the defending national champs at their place in the first game, that's not a disaster at all.
No shame in that. Right.
No, and in the college football playoff committee won't hold it against them later on this season, but if they get everything straightened out, and they got plenty of time to do that. But I want to ask you that about the red zone issues, Kirk, because I had several people write me, one of them accusing me of, or accusing the paper of trying to cover up for Sark and saying that he should have been kicking field goals. And I got to say, did you or I at any point in that game think he should be kicking a field goal here?
Not one.
I did early. I thought that they should have gotten points on the board early. I thought that would be a good way to get some of the nerves calmed a little bit. But I didn't hear from any of you guys up there that there were any questions about them going on 4th and short or down in the red zone.
And I think, Evan, to your point, they're at the 1 yard line. And every coach and player will tell you that, well, that's a manhood issue. Well, if we can't score from the 1, we don't deserve to win. And Sark doesn't like field goals, And this was the problem last year in the Cotton Bowl. If y'all remember, they had that first down at the 1 and ended up with the toss sweep. And thank God he didn't call that play again. He might have been tired.
I think he struck that
on the spot.
Yeah,
so
probably.
But here's the other thing, guys. To that end, I had no problem with him going for it either time. But then remember, Kevin, when they're at the 45-yard line, Ohio State, 4th and 2, and he punts. I go, what are you doing?
For the half.
Yeah, less than a minute left. And his answer was very lame because he said, I don't want to give him free points. Well, you're assuming you're not going to make it? That's a terrible message to send to your team, I think.
Well, it's a mixed message.
Hey, guys, before we go any further, I will say the one outcome of all this is, and I read this or heard this earlier in the week, that when somebody was a national pundit was questioned on who their pick for the national championship team was, the prediction, which I thought made some sense, was the loser of the Texas-Ohio State game.
Really?
Because it takes some of the hype off of them. True. And it allows them to just get back into their schedule. Right. And this loss should not penalize. Which should not have penalized either team.
Right.
I think Clemson's loss at home, that penalizes them. I don't think Texas losing on the road to the number 3 team and defending national champion by a touchdown, I don't think that's going to penalize them anyway.
It would only hurt them if it came down to a tiebreaker between those 2 teams. You're exactly right. And one thing I've tried to point out to people is that, the last 2 teams that were in the playoffs last year, Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois, an 8-5 team in week 2. Ohio State had 2 regular season losses. They weren't undefeated. They had 2. including losing to one of the worst Michigan teams I've ever seen. And they all wanted to fire their coach on Thanksgiving. 4 games later, they're national champs. So, to your point, Evan, I think if anything, they'll be rewarded a little bit for trying it, and because I'm watching all these other games, and OU's beating Illinois State, and Penn State beats Nevada JV, and it's like, what do we really learn about that team? And that's one reason in my AP vote, which was due last night, I put Ohio State number 1 because they took a risk. They played the number 1 preseason team.
Where did you have LSU? I'm just curious because of that win.
I moved LSU to second. I put them second by scheduling Clemson, winning the game at Clemson, and they looked very good. I considered them for number 1, but I thought, well, Ohio State kind of gets the benefit of the doubt as defending champs, and that defense was terrific.
Could you take points away from LSU just for having a coach who always looks like he's gassy?
Thought about that, but I bumped them up to number 2, and then I think I had Miami third for beating Notre Dame. So I really rewarded those teams that had those risky schedules.
So let's look around the rest of the state here, Kirk. If you and that's when we do like we do a best in Texas poll, and if you look at the rest of the state, and just to the point you were making about Oklahoma, nobody else is playing anybody.
Right.
And A&M beat UTSA, and they were, I guess, what was that, a 24-point favorite? So the Roadrunners covered in that game. The Aggies' running attack was miserable against UTSA. Marcel Reed led them in rushing with 39 yards rushing. So that's got to be a little bit of an issue, right? Don't we? I was, one of the things that Mike Elko said after last season, well, we've got to get our defense fixed. And they struggled a little bit along those lines. They got gashed by Robert Henry, who's the UTSA running back, for, I think, 177 yards. So both those issues got to be a little concerning, aren't they?
You give up 24 at home to UTSA, absolutely, and to get only 108 yards on the ground. Well, I thought they're going to have a top 5 rushing team. I don't know if they led the SEC in rushing last year. I think they did. They're almost 200 yards rushing a game, and then you get 108 at home. So maybe that offensive line is really overrated. So yeah, I expected more out of the Aggies, before they go to Notre Dame, and so I think that's some troubles there loom ahead if they don't get those fixed right away. Texas Tech scored 67 against Arkansas Pine Bluff JV, and their quarterback got hurt. I guess he's okay, Baron Morton. But
we guess he's okay. We're not sure about that.
No, we're not sure.
And that's going to be an issue for them. I would say that this is a bad sign for SMU that Miami beat Notre Dame. I wasn't sure how much difference, Carson Beck was going to make in that offense, but and I will say this too, that catch made down there by the end zone by the Miami receiver, I can't even remember his name, but where he shoved it, he makes the one-handed catch. Yeah, that ball is headed right. Yes, it was headed right for that Notre Dame defensive back. Right. He's got his hands up for the interception. Basically, Carson's just putting it up for grabs there, and his guy comes down with it with a Hall of Fame catch.
And see, that was the difference, Kevin. Texas receivers didn't make a circus catch. And you look at the highlights, and Florida guy makes a catch like that. C.J. Daniels from Miami makes a catch like that. Just, crazy catches. And that's the other thing that Arch needed. So, Notre Dame really has to beat A&M there. They don't want to, have 2 losses in September, or they could be marked men for, being out of the playoffs.
Well, that could have been the worst thing to happen for the Aggies, though, losing that.
Oh,
game.
Yeah, absolutely. I was impressed by TCU. I mean, North Carolina, terrible, with 70 new players, but I'm a big John Hoover fan, and boy, their skill position people look good. And, I think TCU may be in the thick of things in the Big 12.
That's Josh Hoover, pal, not John Hoover.
Josh Hoover.
You're thinking of the Tulsa sports writer, John Hoover.
Right. I like them both.
The way we're going to say, we're big fans of both of them. Yeah, Josh Hoover looked terrific in that game. I was thinking if Texas had Josh Hoover against Ohio State, they would have won that game.
Absolutely, they would have.
So I want to say one last thing about that Texas game and about Arch Manning is that the one thing that I loved about him watching him is that when he got outside the pocket, he looked very much in command. Even though he was nervous the rest of the time when someone's chasing him, it was just like this. He knew this guy's not going to catch me. I'm going to get away from here. And he did do that. That 15-yard run, I talked about that, was a terrific run. And then he gets hit out of bounds, and there's no call there, no roughing the quarterback call. That'd been another 15 yards. Who knows what would have happened if that had been the case. But they didn't deserve to win that game.
No, they didn't. The best team won, but Sark even said he wished he had run the ball more with Arch early, kind of get him acclimated a little bit more. And they should have used their tight end earlier because, he could be a real weapon for him this year.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just didn't think. I just didn't think. The last thing I'll say, I just did not think Sark did the things necessary to help a young quarterback.
Correct.
I did not think that was my takeaway. The other takeaway I had from the weekend is I don't know if Kalen DeBoer lasts the full season at Alabama.
He's got to be kicking himself for leaving Washington. You don't replace the legend. You replace the guy who replaces the legend. I mean,
it'd be one thing if he'd been coming from Idaho State.
Yeah, exactly.
Why leave Washington, a place that you're going to dominate, and you could, you can have a pretty nice career there, to go to a place like that? I don't.
And just real quickly, I left them out of my top 25 today, just because Alabama looks.
Well, I don't think most people would disagree with you. Not in Tuscaloosa, they would.
It's going to be interesting when it comes out later today.
Yeah, it will. Kirk, thanks for coming on with us, man.
You're going to hear from some Bama people.
Oh, yeah. I'm ready for that.
We'll see you down the road here, Kirk.
Thanks, guys. Enjoyed it.
See you, Kirk.
Take care, Evan. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, that brings us to the Rangers. And, there was, I don't know, I thought a couple of weeks ago, if we were talking about the Rangers at this point, it was just more of the postmortem. But they have clawed their way right back into the thick of things here as we're recording this Tuesday morning. They are, 1.5 games out of the wild card.
Well, effectively 2 games out behind Seattle, since Seattle owns the tiebreaker. And they're 4.5 out of the American League West with 6 games against the Astros. So it's been a dramatic turnaround, Kevin, and wholly unpredictable based on the fact that this team has lost its biggest players, and maybe now without Adolis Garcia for a while, after he seemed to pull a quad last night in Arizona. But I do think that it has offered the Rangers some opportunities here. You've brought up a lot of young players who are getting a chance to play that they probably never ever thought, and I think
before we get into all your prognosis here, let's talk about that game because it was late, and so we didn't get that. A lot of our people might not have got the particulars of it, but I would put that one up there as a top 5 for the whole season from a standpoint of what you needed to do, the fact that you did it without some of your best players. And you were down early, 3-0, 3 home runs by Patrick Corbin in the first 2 innings, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you were 1-32 on the road in games you trailed after 8 innings, and the one win was over the Chicago White Sox, which doesn't really count for much. And you go to the 9th inning down 2 runs after you had given up 2, and you had tied the game, come back to tie the game top of the 6th. Give up another run on a 2-out 0-2 hit in the 6th, and then you go to the 9th and you're down 2 runs, and you rally back, and there were some really good at bats in that 9th inning, and that's what we're seeing much more competitive at bats, and at bats that seem to have a plan and a willingness to do what the at-bat asks, not what the hitter necessarily wants to do.
Yes, exactly. I mean, case in point, Cody Freeman getting up there at the plate and with 2 strikes. And, of course, he chokes up like 9 inches anyway. It doesn't matter what.
There's a picture on the website right now of that swing. And I would encourage people to go and look at the story on the website to see where he is at the end of that swing, because he is almost bent over at a 90-degree angle and into the other's batter's box. He had to reach out on 2 strikes to get a sweeper that was at the very bottom corner and served it into right field. And he had started that at bat out with a big swing. He had started that at bat out with a big swing, brought himself back into the at bat, and got to 2 strikes. And then when he got a pitch that he absolutely had to at least put into play, he did. And that's, if you're gonna sum up Cody Freeman's baseball abilities, the number one thing that I think the Rangers would point to is he doesn't strike out. He makes contact. And when you've got to optimize run scoring opportunities, as we've talked about all year, you got to have guys who make some contact.
Yeah, and I've seen him do that more than once. Not to that degree, what we were just talking about, but I've seen him go with that pitch to right field. And that's the thing that's infuriating about watching so many of the Rangers. Is just what you said. Doesn't matter what the count is, I'm taking a full rip here, and if there was just more of, all I gotta do is serve this ball in the right field here, we're gonna tie the game, and of course some great base running by Zeke Duran, who has really had a resurgence here. I'd written off Zeke. I thought this
had too
for him to go, and he comes in. He's been hitting a lot better, and that base running and that slide was the best slide I've seen by anybody. And I don't know how long in that. Not only was he sliding to the outside of home plate as he should have, but he ducked away even as he's sliding. He pulled his head back away from the sweep of the catcher at that point and got his hand in on the corner of the plate. It was just a picture perfect slide. So these are some of the things that the Rangers have not done well, all the things we're just talking about, and they are doing that now. So at this point, Evan, I mean, what do you think about their chances?
Well, I think that I don't know what to think, Kevin. I really don't.
No, it's an impossible team to figure out.
They have stacked so many odds against themselves, but they are getting what they most need right now, which is a team that is playing free. And I think there's different elements to this, and it's kind of a theory I've started to run around the clubhouse a little bit. But this season was over when the Rangers lost at Kansas City on Thursday, the 21st. They had lost Simeon. They had lost Carter. They had lost another tiebreaker to another team ahead of them in the wild card race. And they did come back and win on Friday against Cleveland at home. But the next night, Cody Freeman hit his first home run. And we saw a guy basically skip around the bases. And we saw a joy in playing that really hasn't been evident on the field. And I think there were some guys who, had been faced with the idea that, look, this season is probably over. We can fold it in, or we can just say, let's go play. And they said, let's play. Let's just play. Let's stop worrying about what our batting average is, what this is, what that is, and let's just go play. And then they saw Freeman and said, you know what? We can also have fun. It's okay to have fun. And then when you factor in that you've lost Simeon and Seager, and listen, these are two of the best players in baseball.
Valdi.
Well, just on the position player side.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the offense here. You lose Simeon, you lose Seager, and whether Marcus is the same offensive player he was or not, he is very diligent, works very hard, very regimented, and he is still a positive asset on the team. But you lose both those players, and you've lost the two guys who are the focal points of your offense. And in a lot of ways, the guys that whether you want to call them leaders or not, that the younger players have to follow, And so you try to do things the way Corey does, or you try and do things the way Marcus does. And they do things in entirely different ways. And without them now, the young players all have to look around and say, well, we just go do it our way. And I think that's allowed them to play a little bit more free. And so you factor all those things in, and I do think it's made a difference right now. Can this team win the World Series with this lineup out there? No. They need their players back. But this is the lift that they need right now that nobody could foresee coming.
Well, they might be able to get some of those guys back, too, that would give you a chance once the playoffs get here. But, yes, there's no question about it. They're still getting really good starting pitching, and they are, Chris Martin coming back is a big boon for the bullpen. That's a lot of alliteration there. Big boon for the bullpen. So we'll see what happens here. But good for them. They're starting to play a little bit more like the team we thought they were going to be before the season started.
And one other thing, I'm planning to write something related to Freeman, and I don't want to make too much of a guy hitting still under 200 for the year. But he also offered a quote on Monday night when I asked him after the game. I said, "What's your approach on 2 strikes?" And he said he wasn't getting me out. He wouldn't get me out, and there's a little bit of cockiness, that edge that you like from the little guy, the guy who's got to be an instigator. But it's a kind of cockiness that this club hasn't offered all year, and so I do think that there's been a little burst of energy from these young guys, from Freeman, from Duran. Listen, last night Alejandro Osuna, who's had 2 hits in a month, comes in and gives them the lead with a smoked line drive off the butt of the Diamondbacks pitcher Burgos. So I just think everybody's playing with a little bit more freedom right now, and it's allowed them to kind of expand who they are.
Yeah, we'll see where it takes them. All right, that's going to do it for the Rangers segment of our podcast. The Dallas Morning News would like to extend its condolences to the family of Leroy Jordan, one of the Dallas Cowboys all-time great players, one of Alabama's all-time great players. He was, if you're making a list, he's in anybody's top 10 Cowboys, and was a tremendous player, so hard-nosed. He just came from a different generation. This is a guy who grew up on a farm in Alabama that didn't have electricity until he was 12. So that sounds like something from, the Abraham Lincoln story, but this is the Leroy Jordan story, and was just such a competitor. I was struck by 2 of the stories that I found in his memoir, and one was about the Senior Bowl when he was had 4 of his front teeth knocked out, blood gushing everywhere. The trainers come out and they're stuffing gauze in his mouth just to try to stop the bleeding, and Leroy spits it out and says, "Let's go." And on a game that means absolutely nothing, he makes 3 of the 4 stops on the goal line stand for the South to win that game. And then the other was when he was playing for the Cowboys and Dan Reeves. Of course, he went on to a terrific career with the Cowboys and then became head coach of the Falcons and the Broncos. He was moved to running back from safety. His first carry, he goes through the hole and is met by Leroy Jordan. He basically more or less wakes up, his face mask crushed, his lip mangled, and he says to Leroy later, "If you do that to your teammates, what are you doing to opponents?" And Leroy told him, "Dan, if my grandmother put on a helmet, I'd have to go tackle her too." So that's the kind of way he played. Plus, he was tremendously prepared. One of his contract negotiations, he asked for a film projector that he could take home and study film at home. There was no one ever better prepared, no one tougher than Leroy Jordan. And what a great career, gone at 84. So that'll do it for us this week's podcast. We appreciate you coming out and listening. We hope you'll come back next week. From everybody in here to everybody out there, thanks, and we'll see you next time.